Hey, welcome everyone. This is Jessie Rowe. She has started working 18 years ago in property management, and she has since started working in real estate and has formed a group called Project Resiliency that we're going to talk about. She's also a regional and national speaker and has written a book on different areas of dealing with mental illness. Jessie, thank you so much for joining us. How are you doing today? Are you staying warm?
Yeah, trying.
I love it. Go ahead and tell us, where are you tuning in from?
I'm tuning in from Papillion, Nebraska, which is just a little town right outside of Omaha.
Okay, cool. And it's chilly there. I mean, so I'm in central Wisconsin and it's like negative high 20s or something crazy here. What is it like in Nebraska right now?
Winfield is negative 36 with a negative 12 temperature. So
yeah. That's crazy. It's like the snow apocalypse.
No.
Freezing. Like the Elsa movie just comes to mind, freezing everything. Right. I can't even. So I love to start off by giving everyone something interesting about yourself or your life. So whatever you want to share with us, something interesting about you, let's kick it off with that.
I used to do community theater and was an extra in a movie. So
oh, fun.
Yeah, it was way fun. I totally got my own trailer even. They did my makeup, they did my outfit, and then they put me in my own trailer.
So, that's super cool. In Nebraska, or where was this at?
It was just across the river in Council Bluffs is where the set was for my scene. Unfortunately, my scene got cut, but it was so cool.
Yeah, that's a fun experience. Well, yeah. Heck. So you were a stage manager. Tell us a little bit about that. I don't even know what that consists of.
I have been a stage manager for a couple of productions here in Omaha, kind of community theater based. And that is a lot of fun. You're in charge of everything from the props to the actors and actresses. And yes, there are divas. But you get to put them in line, which is awesome. And just making sure that the whole show comes together as one. Like you're the one with the headset hollering, I need someone that stage left, all that good stuff. So it's so much fun.
Wow, that's a big job. Like when you're talking about that makes me think of like the conductor of the whole like orchestra. Like you're just making sure it all's flowing together and working cohesively, and like that's a huge job.
It was. I started small and then went to bigger production. And then I also decided I wanted to act. So I did some acting and in community theater. And then I was like, I like being in charge. I like acting. So I went back to stage managing.
Oh, that's awesome. Mm-hmm. I love it. It's okay for liking to be in charge. We definitely women that in those roles. So that's awesome. That's so cool. Well, I love that. That's a fun little fact about you. So do you still do acting?
I don't. So I stopped doing theater work after I had my twins who are 7. And theater keeps you really busy at night and like every night and the weekends, and it's just not very doable when you've got
time consuming. Yeah.
Wow. And it doesn't, when you're only doing it in the community, it doesn't pay as well at the time.
Sure.
But the experience in itself is just so much fun. When my kids get older and are more self-sufficient, I'll be going back.
Right. Mm-hmm. That's awesome, because it's something you enjoy, but there's just not time for it, and there's not space for it right now. So, well, that's really cool. Like, something that you love that you'll end up going back to. I like that. That's good.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So, tell us about a significant time in your life that fear held you back from living your life fully.
Wow. That would have been just about 1.5 years ago. I was 2 years into my divorce, and I was at a job that I did not like. with people that were very gossipy. And then on top of that, I had to have major back surgery. And it was just awful. I'd lost faith in myself. I had lost confidence. I had lost everything. And that was in 2017, and it spiraled into 2018. So yeah, it was not one of my better moments.
Yeah. So you had your major back surgery was during your divorce?
My divorce was 2 years before that.
Okay.
But at the time, me and my ex, who ironically live together now, just as exes to raise our kids. I know it sounds
co-parenting,
but it works.
So wait. Hold on. You live together.
Mm-hmm.
You've been divorced for 2 years?
We've been divorced for 4 years now.
You've been divorced for 4 years, but you currently live together separately to raise your 7-year-old twins.
Yep.
That's awesome. Like that. I mean,
I love seeing people's reaction.
That's amazing that you're coexisting and co-parenting. Like I'm a child of divorce. Like I grew up with my parents being divorced, but that would never happen.
I'm the same way. My parents still, it's awkward for them to be in the same room.
Right.
It's crazy. And they think we're nuts. And I'm like, do you know it's actually nuts? What's nuts is you guys have been divorced for like 24 years and still can't be in the same room together. That's nuts.
That's nuts.
But yeah, we lived together, but at the time that I was going through this horrible phase in life, we did not get along.
Okay.
We were still fighting over divorce stuff, and it wasn't jiving.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, I love that you shared that you co-parent, because I know, a lot of people are probably like, oh, that's crazy. That can't work, this and that. Well, it's your business, right? And it works for your family. Like, that's amazing that, that you guys make it work.
Everybody that asks me about it, once they come to my house and see us in action, they're like, oh, okay, I totally get it. It's just, we always had the friendship part down, and that's truly what it takes, is to have the friendship part, and then to have these wonderful kids that you want to make sure is getting mom and dad at all times. You can't beat that.
That's amazing. I'm just so baffled at that. Like, I just think so incredible to be able to, hear from someone that you're doing. So how long have you guys lived together now, co-parenting? About a year?
Close to.
Okay.
You're real close.
That's awesome. Well, congratulations about that. Like, I'm just flabbergasted about that. I think that's awesome. Very cool. So, so talking about your fear, so when fear was holding you back in those times of everything going on with your surgery and the divorce and everything like that, where were you mentally, and how did you feel about yourself during that time?
Mentally, I was in a bad place. I have bipolar and anxiety disorder, and it felt like no medication was really working for me. So it sucked me down further.
Okay.
And, I actually got to the point where I was like, I feel like I peaked, like career-wise, life-wise. I feel like I'm not going to grow anymore. I'm not going to.
Like, this is as good as it gets.
Yeah, this is it. And it was the worst feeling, because that is not me. But when you're in that moment, you really don't even realize sometimes that you're in it. You're going through the motions. Right.
Yeah. You don't know what you don't know until you know it.
Exactly. And I've even, since coming out of it, I've told people, I'm like, if you see me doing X, Y, Z, or going down this path, call me out on it, because I don't necessarily see it.
Right.
And of course, there's a nice way to call somebody out, and there's the way you don't want to call somebody out.
Yes. And obviously you trust people that you tell, like, watch for these things. Like, you're not just telling everyone and anyone that wants to give their opinion about what's happening in your life. So
exactly.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great advice tip too. So So yeah, obviously you're not feeling good about all of those things happening and really depressed about it, scared, a lot of fear around that. But when you're breaking free of the fear, let's talk about that a little bit. So talking about breaking free of the fear and moving on like into a better direction. Sometimes we have the friendships and relationships that shift and change. And tell us a little bit more about how that worked for you and your situation.
So my situation, I'm not gonna lie, is a little dark.
Yeah.
I didn't have really any good close friends at the time,
Okay.
and I had my family who I love dearly, but they're busy too, and I seriously didn't know what was wrong with me other than this is just who I am now. And I even got fired from that awful job, and I'd never been fired before. So I found another job. And in that other job, I thought, oh my God, this is so great. It's a blessing, blah, blah, blah. I look back at it now and it was not. So there was one night in April 19th, that I had gotten called into my boss's office, and he was telling me how disappointed he was in me on the way something got handled. And there was an implication of being written up or something like that. And I cried. I got teary-eyed. I didn't really know how to cry back then. I got teary-eyed, and I drove home, and I got into the garage and shut the garage door and literally said, I'm not doing this anymore. I am not able to adult. I am not able to function. I am not able to raise two kids. I can't do this. So I left my car running while the garage door was closed. And I literally, a friend of mine kept texting me and was getting mad at me for not texting back. And I texted back really quick and then threw the phone aside and didn't answer it. Well, I didn't realize this friend had my address. I knew he knew where I lived. I didn't know if he knew my exact address.
Right.
All of a sudden, I'm sitting in my car and I literally said, okay, God, here's the deal. You did a wonderful job, but you didn't build me to be here. So I'll do your work, but I'm doing it up there. Here I come. Next thing I know, my door is getting kicked down by the fire department. They come into my house. I tried to play I wasn't doing anything. Nothing's going on. You need to get out. And ended up being put on 24-hour mental health hold in Emmanuel Hospital. And then I ended up extending that stay as per doctor's request for 3 more days. So I was in the hospital for 4 days. And then I went to partial hospitalization for 3.5 weeks. That's where you go Monday through Friday from 9 to 3. It's kind of your ease back into reality and into life. And not everybody gets to do that. And I was just talking to my therapist who I found in partial, and I was saying, I think everybody should have to go through partial, because to just throw somebody back out in the real world after something like that is very traumatic. But so first week of partial, it was like, I don't know that I can do this. I'm not there. In my head, there was it's not going to get better. This is how
you were still in that negative mindset of, not being enough and not feeling your value to be here.
Exactly. And then and the only thing I would talk about in group was, I'm going to get fired. I'm going to get fired. I'm going to get fired. It was like I was a broken record. It got to the point where I started telling people, what I'm worried about, don't even ask. And 2 weeks into it, I started to loosen up a bit. When it was time to go, I got nervous, and then came home, and because I was nervous because I had to start going back to the office after that weekend. And it was a Thursday afternoon right before Memorial Weekend, and I had interviewed with a guy about a real estate job, and I had had my real estate license since 2003 but never really used it. And I made the phone call. I took a huge deep breath and a big leap of faith. And I called HR and I said, I am so sorry. I cannot come back. I am not trying to leave you high and dry, but I cannot come back to this job. It is a trigger for me. And she knew what had happened.
Okay.
And, and she said, Jessie, no job is worth your life. You're not leaving us high and dry. You're not leaving us in a bad position. Do what you need to do. And I had a little bit of savings. And so I decided to get into real estate so I could kind of set my own hours. And it has been amazing. Like AJ, my therapist, who saw me impartial, and some of my friends who I made impartial, all say they're just like, you are a night and day, Jessie. Like you used to sit there and just be like this. And they're like, now you're like all over the place using your hands, doing this, doing that. And I'm just like, that was actually the old Jessie. I just thought I lost her. Right. And I didn't. Between a good combination of medication and therapy, old Jessie came back. So that turning point, it took a while and it took a really dark path. I mean, I don't want anybody to get to a point in their life where they make an attempt on their life in order to turn their life around. But it took me to a dark place, but it ended up really, really positive.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So your friend that was texting you, did he call the fire department? Like he just felt like he knew? Like, I don't get that part.
Yeah, he knew.
Had you talked about it?
Not really, but he knew my mental health struggle, and he was in residency to be a physician. So he kind of, put the pieces together. Okay. And, he called 911, and it's very interesting because, the guy that kicked my door down was a former friend of mine's brother who I used to have the biggest crush on. And I was like, oh my God, it's Lewis. Lewis is kicking my door down. Well, luckily, Lewis is on my Facebook page. And it took me until, like 4 months ago to get up the courage and to message him and say, thank you for saving my life. And thank you for being there. It helped in a way to know somebody that was in there trying to help me. And he goes, what are you talking about? And I laid the date out. I laid the time out. And he was like, oh my God, I remember that. That was you. That didn't even look like you. And I was like, that was me. And he goes, well, I owe you a door. It was like, no, it cost $25, Lewis. It's cool. And I go, you just take me to dinner one night.
Right.
But ever since then, him and I have been really close. He's helping with Project Resiliency. And like he just texted me a minute ago telling me about how he got called out because he's a captain of the fire department, and that they got called out in this nasty cold to use the fire hoses. And he's like, they're going to freeze. And I'm like, oh, no. But Lewis.
So that's a good friendship that came out of that, you know?
Like Noah, who I still keep in touch with, he's the one that made the call. And he doesn't live here. He got moved to St. Louis for his permanent resident.
Okay.
He's now a physician. And we still keep in touch. And then Lewis and I talk regularly. And I will tell you, I was never mad at Lewis. I was infuriated with Noah for about 4 days because I was adamant. This is what I wanted to do. I had made my peace with God. I had made my peace with my kids because honestly, I know so many people think that suicide is selfish. You need to understand that when you're coming from the side of the person making the attempt, to us, it's not. We think we're actually taking the burden off of you. Mm-hmm. We think that we are too much, too extra, and that we don't want to.
What did I tell you? Too muchness is always welcome. I love too muchness.
And so, that is, I mean, we are not viewing it in that moment from a selfish place. And the other thing is in that moment, you're so low. There's literally nothing anybody can say to change that except to tell you we're going to the hospital, force you to go to the hospital. So, yeah, it was a surreal experience, one that I will never forget. And I think that's important because it's shaped me in being stronger mentally.
Oh yeah, it's a huge turning point in what happened. So I mean, obviously that's what compelled you to jump ship from like all the fears before, your attempt on your own life was the turning point and where that happened and starting to get help with the physicians and the people at the hospital that were helping you. So what advice would you give people in overcoming their fears?
Oh, well, the main thing is to believe, whether you believe in God, Buddha, universe, Allah, you name it, I don't care. Believe that it is going to work. Vision yourself in that position and believe that it's going to work, and have a plan. Write it on. I have a marker board right there. I'm looking at my plan right now. Have a plan, write it down, because it's interesting when we write goals down. You could throw that piece of paper like somewhere in a book on an old bookshelf. And when you run into it, let's say 5 years from now, because I had this happen, all of a sudden you open it up and it was like, done. I forgot I even made this list. So I recommend getting out of self and really looking at the big picture, because for me, it was always money driven. Yeah. I have to have this job because I make X amount of dollars. But when you think about it, we can adjust and adapt our lifestyle to just about any income. If we're very careful and conscientious about it. Yeah. And money does not buy you happiness. I will tell you that in personal hospitalization, there was me, the real estate property manager. There was a nurse, there was a third grade teacher, there was a cop. It was all these professionals that had and we all had the same thing in common. Our disorders were different, but the trigger all was work. And so all of us, we still keep in touch, but all of us have made major life changes based on the fact that if work is bringing you, or if a fear is bringing you to this low of a place where you're not even yourself anymore, right there, you have to make that leap, because it's so worth it. You can't lose yourself because of something as simple as a job, or as simple as taking a small pay cut in order to be doing something you love. Yeah, 100%. I mean, life is just too short for you to hate what you have to go and do, like what you need to do every day to make a living, to feed your family, to keep a roof over your house. Like, you can't hate that. And if you do, then that's definitely the first thing that needs to change, or start doing something that brings joy around that. Maybe it's switching to a different division or something for you to do something different in the company. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's huge. I love that you talked about writing it down, because I'm definitely, I didn't think I was. Honestly, I hate my handwriting. It's chicken scratch. So I've always been like avoiding writing things down. In the last 2 years, I've started writing down everything. I have papers everywhere that I write down lists and to-dos and all of that. You are so like me. I have it too. It's everywhere.
Yep. It's everywhere. Yeah. And if I did try and do like a list on like my computer, but it's not the same. Pen to paper, like it really does sink in. And it makes me think of the Harry Potter where they write in the book and it sinks in and soaks in. That's why I think of it. I don't know.
Okay, I'm a huge Harry Potter dork, so
I love it.
That just made my heart happy.
Yeah, that's instantly what I thought of, the book when they write in there and it disappears and it soaks it in. I'm like, yes, soak it in. That's how I feel when I put pen to paper and I write things out. It makes me remember it that much more.
Yes, it does. It does.
Yeah, that's a great tip. I love that.
The other thing I'd say, like I'm looking at my board right now.
Yeah.
January 1, everybody came up with resolutions.
Right.
I don't call them resolutions. I call them goals, because
Yep.
resolutions usually fail.
Right. Yeah.
A goal is something that you can set and make it attainable. A resolution is something that you set and you say vaguely, I want to lose weight.
Right.
Okay, that's great. But in actuality, like for instance, right now I've got on my board $1.5 million in sales in 2019 in real estate. But I also have maintained mental health.
Right.
So it's very important to.
I don't think you can get one without the other, right? Like,
right.
If you don't maintain your mental health, how are you going to get those big goals that are on the board too? So.
Yes, and for me, that goal of maintaining mental health, I'm sure there's some people like, well, that's vague. Well, technically, I want it, when I elaborate on it in my head, it's self-care. Make sure I'm doing those self-care things, which gives me good mental health, which will get me 1.5 million in sales.
Yep. Exactly. I say that too. I was just at a wedding expo all weekend, and when I'm explaining to women what I do with my boudoir photography, I'm like, it's not about the pictures. It's about giving you permission to give yourself something for self-care, self-love, and the pictures are just to relive it. So when people are looking at me like all blank, I'm like, it's not about the pictures. It's about the experience that you have and making sure the self-care is there, because taking care of yourself is the most important thing. You are the most important person in your whole world.
Right.
And when I told people that, I had a couple ladies like tear up when I told them that. Like, people, women especially, just really need to make sure that self-care is important. And I love that you mentally just talked about how you break that down in your head with mental health, because I think that's huge.
Well, and even if I didn't have a mental illness, which I do.
Right.
But you don't have, there are two things I've learned. One, you don't have to have a mental illness to go off the reservation.
Right.
You can have the worst week ever, and that means you're not doing proper self-care. But two, suicide doesn't discriminate. Whether you have mental illness, no matter what socioeconomic class you're in, suicide does not discriminate. So to avoid that fleeting thought sneaking up on you, that's why I recommend to everyone that I talk to, and a lot of the things we video about on Project Resiliency is self-care.
Yeah.
And that can be something as simple as a hot bath with a bath bomb.
Right.
It doesn't have to be
expensive. It's funny that you say that. That's exactly what I give my clients, because I'm like, continue this at home. Like, take this home and just take 5 minutes for yourself and just take some care time.
So cool.
That's awesome. Thank you. So while you just mentioned Project Resiliency, like, let's talk a little bit about that before I get to my last question. Go ahead and explain more about Project Resiliency.
So Project Resiliency initially started out as a web page called How My Story Almost Ended. And that's a page I started.
Okay.
I connected with somebody and we created Project Resiliency. However, this person is now stepping back because we live in separate states. I live in Nebraska and she lives in Minnesota. Yeah. And she is doing some amazing work. I can't wait till she comes up with her name so that I can just shout it from the rooftops. But she's doing some amazing work in Minnesota, and she was like, I think I want to stay local. So I have Project Resiliency now is based out of Nebraska, and what we are doing is right now we're trying to connect some dots. And how we're doing that is we're reaching out to the American Foundation of Suicide Awareness here in Omaha, the Omaha chapter, to see what we can be doing to help others. I'm very big with the one-on-one. Yeah. I also, I am a recovering alcoholic, very common in mental illness. And I will tell you that I have seen the correlation between addiction and suicide. We've also seen here in Nebraska that first responders aren't getting any training on how to deal with people with mental illness. We're also finding out first responders aren't getting the support if they have mental illness, such as PTSD. Yeah. Their job is at risk rather than giving them help. And then we've also discovered that the Veterans Administration here in Omaha has been diagnosing some of our amazing service men and women with things like PTSD and bipolar and anxiety. And for 6 months, they'll put them on medication and put them in therapy. And then all of a sudden they'll be like, pull the rug out, you're better. Now go. And I just heard the most staggering statistic last night, which was that 22 vets a day die by suicide. That's
22 a day?
22 a day. As per last year's statistics, I actually got this statistic from a vet that I was showing his son a house. And I was telling him about Project Resiliency, and because he mentioned that he works for Veterans Affairs. And I said, you may see me there soon. And I told him why. And he said, it's staggering. It's awful. It breaks my heart. He goes, I love working for them, but the stuff that people have to go through, and then they think they're going to get cured, and then all of a sudden, no more funding for you. So we're really focusing on veterans. I like to say education advocate, and of course, prevention and support. Okay. So had a lot of people reach out to me on Facebook when they are down or when they are in a place. And I have done QPR training, which is question, persuade, and refer. And the first question that I tell everybody that they should ask somebody, and the first piece of advice, if you come to me on Facebook with Project Resiliency, is, can they keep themselves safe? Can you keep yourself safe? That has got to be the first question. I know it sounds uncomfortable, but you'll get so good at it that you'll be like, can you keep yourself safe? And people will be like, this was just a bad day. This wasn't a bad. And I'm like, sorry, but I have to ask.
Just gauging the situation to see what we're working with. Like I would have never thought about that. So that's a great tool to have.
So that's kind of what we're doing. There's more to come. We're still in the infancy phase. I don't think that we're going to become our own nonprofit. I think instead we're going to collaborate with another nonprofit and be an extension of them and the services they provide.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So right now, is there a website or is there a Facebook page?
There's a Facebook page. Let me see. Oh, my friends are so funny. Of course, my battery's going to die. It's Project Resiliency. And it has a lotus flower picture that I'll show you that looks like that. So if you see the lotus flower, then
what is the significance of the lotus flower?
The significance of the lotus flower is rebirth. So in order for a lotus flower to grow, it grows deep down in the muds of the swamp. And then when it's ready to bloom, it pops out of the dirt and the ashes and becomes a beautiful flower. That's awesome.
That's awesome. I love that symbolism with that. That's perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Really cool. Okay. So the last question is, in 5 years, where do you see yourself? You're living more fearlessly. You've got it down to like how you want to help people. Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
I see myself still in real estate. I see myself advocating. I'm probably doing a lot of advocating for mental illness education. And to be honest with you, my son is going through some stuff right now, and I have to advocate for him.
Yeah.
And the one thing I want to leave people with is, if you feel something is wrong and you go to a doctor and they tell you no, you move on to the next doctor. You have to advocate for yourself. If something doesn't feel right, you have to tell them no. Remember, they are practicing medicine. So, and with mental health issues and illness, just because it works for certain pills work for me, they may not work for you. So it's a trial and error. But know that there is a group here, Project Resiliency, that will help you learn how to advocate for yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest part too that I've heard from many people that have been in similar situations, or, you know, the end result has been the same. Like they came out of it obviously, and we're in a better place. But the number one thing I always hear is that advocating for themselves was the hardest thing ever, because you had to keep being persistent at it and hold your ground on how you felt about it. So I love that you said that, because that's what I found to be common.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Unfortunately, but you know, it's also empowering.
Right. Yes,
so
absolutely.
It is unfortunate, but at the same time, it's very empowering when you go in there and you say, nope, I know my body, I know my mind, this is not okay.
Yeah.
And I mean,
100%.
that's empowering, and that's bravery.
Yep.
So
That's right. Live fearlessly. I love it.
exactly.
All about it. So you kind of already touched on it, but I like to ask people, like, well, for one, where can people connect with you personally? Do you want them to go to Project Resiliency, to your personal page? You tell us where you would like to connect with people.
You can find me at Jessica Holsizer Rowe, mouthful, I know, on Facebook. And then if you want to go to Project Resiliency, I'll add you to it. But you can reach out to me at Jessica Holsizer Rowe. I will tell you, it's HULSIZER-ROWE.
Perfect.
The mouthful.
It's all good. And then what is the one thing that you would like, the one last thing you want to leave with the viewers? You kind of mentioned it, but anything you want to like polish off and just say one last thing about moving through fears or any of that?
I would tell you that it does get better if you want it to get better, and that there are people like myself out here that are non-judgmental. We don't care what you've done. We don't care about this. We want you to be your healthiest and better self. Just don't give up on it. Don't throw in the towel yet. There's a plan for you.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for sharing more about your story and the Project Resiliency that you're doing. I think it's amazing how you're working to advocate, educate people, and really support them. I think that's huge. We definitely need more of that in the world, and I appreciate your time very much.
Yes. All right. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Remember to love yourself and live fearlessly. Thanks, everyone.